So tell us what therapeutics are currently available and what's in development that can really focus in this very, very sick population.
Thanks for that question, Dr. Bonavala. And such an important question right now, as we've heard about that in the news quite a lot recently. Yeah, and first I wanted to start with that vaccine, just to kind of as a reminder that there is a silver lining in this pandemic, which is that the global pharma operation really mobilized on this new technology, mRNA vaccines. And once the virus was identified and sequenced and labeled as a pandemic threat, it was immediately moved into this vaccine development. And as we all know, over the last year has resulted in this totally new next generation approach to vaccination that has extraordinarily high efficacy, not just against the primary strain, but also subsequent variants that have evolved as the virus has spread through the population. And even as of just a Lancet paper just a week or so ago, it maintains efficacy. It's extraordinary. But as you mentioned, the vaccine cannot be given to people who are critically ill in the hospital. In fact, I think for those of us that did get a vaccine, you're asked, do you have symptoms or do you have an active coronavirus infection? And so for those patients, of course, we do not have options yet. There are some kind of experimental approaches with monoclonal antibodies. We've heard about Regeneron's products, particularly with the last president. There are some other therapies, but nothing really is the thing that we can administer in the hospital at this time. The good news is that Pfizer, the same company that delivered one of the mRNA vaccines, has in phase 3 clinical trials what's called a protease inhibitor. That may be familiar to some people that know HIV. That's a class of drugs that is an antiviral class of drugs used to treat and chronically manage HIV. Merck also just recently announced stunning efficacy in their replicase inhibitor, which is an analog of another therapeutic strategy that is very effective in HIV. Both of those molecules, as I said, are in phase 3 and are looking very good and likely to probably proceed to emergency use authorization as the vaccine was to help patients who are critically ill in the hospital. Above all of that, this has really illuminated some critical weaknesses in the overall drug discovery infrastructure globally. And so not only industry, but also academic groups, and specifically UC. There's a major collaboration among multiple campuses in the UC network to develop what's called a pandemic preparedness drug discovery platform that we can mobilize once we have identified a pandemic threat to immediately mobilize very rapid drug discovery resources so that we're not caught in this situation when the next pandemic occurs. And I did say when.
Yeah, no, I think that pandemic preparedness is something that we're all talking a lot about. So let me just ask one follow-up question before I go to Daniel. In what part of the process, so somebody has a breakthrough and for whatever reason they have high risk, other high risk factors and end up being critically ill, or as we're seeing a lot now, the unvaccinated patient becomes critically ill. Is that where the best bang for the, or I shouldn't say, is that where you think we should be targeting this next kind of phase of therapeutics? What about the Tamiflu, if you will, kind of strategy? Do you want to comment on something like that?
Well, I think, yeah, so maybe if you're thinking, so there's a couple of different potential applications for these molecules. Again, a major antiviral strategy with HIV, to bring that up again, because it is kind of the last major pandemic virus that we are still facing today, involves a strategy called pre-exposure prophylaxis, where you actually take antiviral medications to prevent infection. And so these molecules could not only be part of a prevention strategy, but also something that's used in the hospital clinical trials right now, are being read off in patients in hospitals, reducing hospitalization stays. So I guess in the Tamiflu case, which is the drug that's used to attenuate influenza infections, that's where this is being tested right now.
Great, thanks so much. We'll have to invite you back to give us an update of where that is.